Good afternoon. We are delighted that you've chosen to spend a little time with us this afternoon to explore some of the findings from research that we've been doing on the Applied Baccalaureate here at the Office of Community College Research and Leadership at the University of Illinois. About 4 years ago, we were funded by the Lumina Foundation for Education in Indianapolis, Indiana, to study applied baccalaureate and community college baccalaureates that were proliferating across the United States. And Lumina asked us to conduct a national inventory and then to explore in greater depth how some states were implementing the applied baccalaureate. We did that project and have recently concluded it, and we'll share some of the findings from our research as we begin the webinar here this afternoon. We'll also then be sharing with you an exciting development, and that is the start of a new project on the Applied Baccalaureate funded by the National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education Research Program. That project is called the Applied Baccalaureate Degree, an Emerging Pathway to Technician Education. As a part of our work, we did get the opportunity to visit several states and work closely with 6 states, and one of those states is Oklahoma. And there we met Scott Newman, who we are delighted has chosen to join us for this webinar and talk with you a little bit about the Applied Baccalaureate degree programs at Oklahoma State University, the Institute of Technology. And Scott also, his institution is actively involved in the NSF-ATE program and can share with you a little bit about how his projects are involved with this work. So with that, I will introduce Colin Rood, who will share with you some of the findings from the Lumina study. He will be followed by Scott Newman, who will talk about the Applied Baccalaureate degrees at Oklahoma State University Institute of Technology. And then I will share with you where this research is going with the support of ATE. So with that, Colin.
Hello again, everyone. Before we start, I actually want to launch a quick poll, and I'm just trying to ask and ascertain from all of you what organization type you represent, just to see what our audience looks like. So I'm going to launch that poll now and let you all vote on that, give you about 30 to 40 seconds to answer that question. And if you need to, you can always select more than one of those options. If you work at an institution but also work with NSF, you can always indicate that by checking both boxes. Give you about 10 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now, and I'll share this information with all of you. So it looks like a majority of the folks are from public institutions as either staff and or faculty members. And then we have some equal representation from folks who work on NSF-ATE projects and centers, some folks from local, state, or national governments, and then people representing some other group. All right. Well, I want to share with you some of the information that we got from our original research sponsored by Lumina Foundation for Education. One of the things that we tried to do is address what exactly an applied baccalaureate degree is. And so in looking at the applied baccalaureate as a policy or as an institutional policy, it really represents the merger of 2 separate areas of higher education, and that's the transfer as well as terminal degrees. So when we look at the applied baccalaureate degree, it's really applying a transfer pathway to associate degrees that are either historically considered terminal or at one time were considered terminal. But when we look at applied baccalaureate degrees, there's more to it. There's also an institutional aspect for who is awarding these applied baccalaureate degrees. And one of the things we found in our research is that applied baccalaureate degrees are being offered at either associate degree granting institutions or baccalaureate degree granting institutions. Although by and large, as I will outline some of the research we've done, we find a preponderance of institutions are really the baccalaureate degree granting institutions, but we do have some solid numbers of associate degree granting institutions that have been given the authority to award applied baccalaureate degrees. So the research on the applied baccalaureate began in 2007 with our work with Lumina Foundation. This was a two-phase approach. The first phase was a 50-state inventory of applied baccalaureate degrees, and we were looking specifically within the public sector at both 2- and 4-year institutions. The second phase of research was a case study of 6 states that we identified through their willingness to participate in research, the unique aspects that they had in their approach to applied baccalaureate degrees, their representation of different models of applied baccalaureates, which I'll share with you in just a moment. But if you want to read any additional information about the project we did and some of the results, you can actually go to this website you see at the bottom of the slide, occrl.illinois.edu/projects/Lumina. I will also be sharing some of the publication links as well after this. The first thing we had to do for our research was define the applied baccalaureate degree. As I showed you earlier, it represents the merger of terminal and transfer education, but we wanted to get a more specific definition of the applied baccalaureate. So in our research, we defined the applied baccalaureate as a bachelor's degree designed to incorporate applied associate courses and degrees once considered as terminal or non-baccalaureate level, while providing students with the higher order thinking skills and advanced technical knowledge and skills so desired in today's job market. We actually feel that this definition is fairly specific because we look at it in 3 different aspects. The first is the transfer of terminal or non-baccalaureate level courses or degrees, what we often consider as applied associate degrees in coursework. But the additional aspects of this are the higher order thinking skills and advanced technical knowledge and skills. So there certainly has to be some upper division coursework that is providing some of the thinking skills and technical knowledge that folks are looking for in today's job market. So with that, we found several different approaches to the applied baccalaureate degree, which we're representing as applied baccalaureate models. And these are highly based off of the work of Jan Ignash, who found 3 distinct models of applied baccalaureate degrees. And those 3 models are the 3 that you see on the left there, the career pathway or the career ladder model, which takes an applied associate degree and adds some advanced technical education on top. So it's a highly technical degree. It's very career focused, and it's very focused on one specific field. The second model is the management model, which can kind of take a few more different fields of applied associate degree, but applies business and management training on top of those applied associate degrees to allow folks to become mid-level managers in whatever fields that they may be in. The third one is the inverse or upside down degree, which we also would call a completion type degree, which is focused on applying the requisite amount of general education and a large amount of elective coursework to help folks reach the baccalaureate degree credits that they need for either state or institutional policy. But in our research, we also found a hybridized model. We found a lot of institutions whose applied baccalaureate degrees actually encapsulated a combination of these. So we would find degrees that had a career pathway aspect, but also provided some sort of management or business training, or something that provided the requisite general education and a lot of elective credits, but also had a management focus on it as well. So these models more or less encapsulate all of the different degrees that we found, but this is a pretty basic way of categorizing the applied baccalaureate degrees that we found. So I want to ask you all a few questions. So we're going to be running another couple of polls just to see what you know about applied baccalaureate degrees before I trace the historical development of these degrees. So the first question is going to ask what decade AB degrees first emerged in the U.S. You can answer these questions however you'd like. I'll give you another 20 seconds to fill that out. Okay, go ahead and close that and share the results with you. Looks like most people think it was in the 1970s or 1980s, with some people around the 1960s, 1990s, and a few who believe it was in the 2000s. Ask you one other question, which is how many states have indicated that at least one public higher education institution awards an applied baccalaureate degree in their state? Go ahead and fill in those answers. Another 10 seconds. All right, close that up and share the responses. Looks like most of you believe it was about 10 to 19 states that award at least one AB degree in the public sector, with some folks believing 20 to 29 or 30 to 39, and then a few with 40 plus and a few with under 10. Well, I will answer those questions for you right now. To answer the first question about the decade of implementation, applied baccalaureate degrees actually emerged in the 1970s. We can see here in this map that in the 1970s, the applied baccalaureate degree existed in 4 states. 3 of those states, it was at the 4-year institutional level only. In one state, New York, it was at only the 2-year institutional level. And that's actually an interesting case. It exists currently at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, which is considered a 2-year institution, but they've been awarding applied baccalaureate degrees since the 1970s. However, I will point out that one of the trends we found is that, by and large, most of the applied baccalaureate degrees exist at the 4-year institutional level, and that becomes a little more clear as we move into the 1980s. The AB degree accepted at the Fashion Institute of Technology was at the 4-year institutional level, and it expanded in the number of states, but by and large, those states were in the Midwest and South regions. Moving into the 1990s, this is when we see the expansion of the community college baccalaureate for the applied baccalaureate degree, as we see 8 states now have the authority to award applied baccalaureate degrees at least one 2-year institution. One of the interesting things between the 1990s and the 2000s is to see some of the states who moved from being granting applied baccalaureate degrees at the 2-year and 4-year institutional levels. Those 2-year institutions that award applied baccalaureate degrees turn into 4-year institutions. You can see that at Utah and Georgia as I move from the 1990s to 2000. But we see further expansion of the applied baccalaureate degree, and this is the map that we use in our 2008 report on the inventory. The applied baccalaureate degree, to answer that second question, was found in 39 of the 50 states at least one public institution. Of those 39 states, 10 of the states have the applied baccalaureate degree at both the 2-year and the 4-year institutional levels within the state. So that leaves 29 states where the applied baccalaureate degree is only at the 4-year institutional level. One other map that we developed in the last year outlines some of the new developments that have occurred in regards to applied baccalaureate degrees. Those states that are indicated in red represent some of the states that have had some new developments. For example, Oregon and Colorado have had some legislatively mandated applied baccalaureate degree research or creation of degrees, whereas in states like Illinois and Michigan, we've seen some movement towards the community college baccalaureate, although none of that movement has resulted in anything significant yet. And I will also point out that there is a little bit of movement right now in California in regards to the community college baccalaureate, although we're talking about legislation that has made it through one committee in the House, so it's unclear as to what's going to happen in that state. But there's certainly some movement for applied baccalaureate degrees in both the 4-year and 2-year institutional levels in a few additional states beyond those original 39 that we found. For our second phase of research, which I won't be able to detail too much, we selected 6 states that represented some unique approaches to the applied baccalaureate degree, as well as having some sort of representative nature that could be applied to other states. The 6 states that we chose were Arizona, Florida, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Texas, and Washington. 2 of those states had the Applied Baccalaureate degree at only the 4-year institutional level, and the other 4 states had it at both the 4-year and the 2-year institutional levels. So we got a good representation of states here, and actually if you want to read some of the work we've done, we have our final report to Lumina, which will be released very soon, where we'll be able to share some of these results. But one of the things I want to make sure we do is that we bring Scott Newman from OSUIT to kind of talk about the approach that institution has had to applied baccalaureate degrees and how this relates to our work with NSF and their Advanced Technological Education program. So after showing you these links for just a few more seconds, I will turn things over to Scott Newman. So, Scott?
Hello, everyone. I want to thank Deb and Colin for inviting me to participate in both the Applied Baccalaureate project as well as this afternoon's webinar. When they first approached me about the latter, Deb and Colin said they were having trouble attracting the level of higher education celebrity that they need for their webinars. Unfortunately, that continues to be a struggle for them, and you're stuck with me. Nevertheless, I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this afternoon's session and hope my comments will be useful. Oklahoma State University Institute of Technology is a branch campus of the OSU system which focuses on applied technical programs. The institution is located approximately half an hour south of Tulsa. And one of the things that I love about the institution is that it really is and has been an institution of opportunity since its founding. When OSUIT opened its doors in 1946, its first class was comprised of 500 World War II veterans, many with disabilities from the war, who sought skills and knowledge which would help them successfully re-enter the workforce. And from 1946 to 1978, OSUIT was a certificate granting institution. In the fall of 1979, OSUIT began offering applied associate's degrees. And an interesting development in 2003, support began to emerge from 3 different sources. And that support was for OSUIT to pursue the ability to offer applied baccalaureate degrees. And those 3 sources were employers of our associate and applied science graduates, the OSU system CEO at the time, and the head of the Oklahoma State Higher Education Board at the time. And really, I believe anyway, that all 3 recognize that the institution occupied a unique position, was well suited to address some critical shortages of individuals with baccalaureate degrees in certain workforce-related disciplines. In 2004, we received approval to offer applied baccalaureate, or what we call Bachelor of Technology degrees, in 3 specific disciplines: instrumentation engineering technology, civil engineering technology, and information assurance and forensics, which, as you can note on the slide, will become a Bachelor of Technology and Information Technologies beginning with the fall 2011 term. In fact, the changes to the Information Assurance and Forensics degrees signal a direct response to requests by both our industry partners and as well as students, both prospective and current. And for OSUIT, the Applied Baccalaureate falls into the, I believe it falls into the career pathway model that Colin spoke briefly about earlier, whereby we put considerable emphasis on the advanced technical proficiency of our students. Having been involved with an applied baccalaureate program for the past few years, I've come to appreciate several benefits that the degree type brings. As far as transfer and articulation are concerned, applied baccalaureate degrees can play critical roles in the creation of educational pathways for graduates of applied associate programs. And to that end, we've developed articulation agreements with several associate-level programs whose students were attracted by the application-focused, workforce-oriented nature of their offerings, but encounter difficulties in continuing their educations at the baccalaureate level. In fact, 2 of OSUIT's applied baccalaureate degrees, those in instrumentation and cybersecurity, have played important roles in creating pathways for students in programs involved with National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education grants. As far as employers are concerned, given that interactions with them played critical roles in the original proposal and the implementation of the implementation processes associated with the degree, we knew that employers were excited at the prospect of hiring individuals with advanced applied skills and knowledge and credentials to that end. And we continue to work very closely with industry representatives to ensure those programs, just as we do our associate level workforce programs, are aligning with industry needs and expectations. A noteworthy component of OSUIT's proposal for the Bachelor of Technology degrees was that we would pursue specialized accreditation for each. And the Information Assurance and Forensics program is ABET accredited. Our folks that are involved with the other two degree options are working very hard and diligently towards that goal. And I'm confident they're going to be successful in the next couple of years. From our standpoint, though, and those in the computing area, having specialized accreditation, in this case ABET, went a long way to helping us establish legitimacy with senior level institutions and higher education professionals within our state and region. As far as next steps for graduates are concerned, the opportunity for upward mobility for our graduates was one of the major reasons we pursued applied baccalaureate degrees. We also wanted to ensure our AAS graduates could continue their educational pathways at some future point. Many of whom who will stop out and go to work may eventually want to return and continue their educations. In general, students from our Associate and Applied Science programs tend to be successful. They do a good job once they go into the workforce. And as a result, many would find themselves in situations in which they could move into supervisory or managerial roles if they had baccalaureate degrees. And that's something that we're seeing more and more of these days. Obviously, this situation isn't unique to OSUIT's Associate and Applied Science graduates, but it's one that we encountered with some frequency and one that we were hoping to respond to by implementing baccalaureate degrees, applied baccalaureate degrees. One of the questions that none of us had a definitive answer to early on was what graduate school opportunities would exist for applied baccalaureate degree students. In response, during the approval and implementation processes, we spoke with a handful of chief academic officers who responded positively, said they didn't foresee any challenges, but we really didn't know. And we knew that we wouldn't know until students actually pursued those opportunities. And while the vast majority of our Bachelor of Technology graduates do go directly into the workforce, that was an important part of the pathway that we wanted to ensure was an opportunity for our students. And I'm happy to report that the graduates who sought to continue their educations at the graduate level have been successful in doing so.
Thank you, Scott. I think some of you you've been able to hear a little bit about the programs there in Oklahoma that we studied as part of our Lumina project. In that work, we did get very interested in this career ladder or career pathway model to the baccalaureate, and we saw it as a potential area that really needs to be better understood, particularly as the workforce is changing and we see growing demand for workers who have advanced skill levels in technical fields. That work led us to dig deeply into some of the specific degree programs that are offered in the 6 states, and clearly that career ladder or career pathway model emerged as one that people want to know more about, but don't always feel like they have the best examples or the best models. Many of those programs are relatively new, or at least have developed in the within the decade of the 2000s, if not even more recently. So that work prompted Colin and I to write a proposal to the National Science Foundation ATE program, and there we suggested that we would take the methodology we had developed with Lumina and apply it to ATE centers and projects and conduct a large inventory to identify where these programs are located in the projects and centers that are funded, and in fact that go back a few years. So our primary goal of the project then is to provide an up-to-date, detailed information about the AV degree programs that are affiliated with NSF-ATE centers and projects. And as we move deeper into the project, there are 3 phases of the project. We'll learn more about the partnerships that are involved, the curriculum that's offered, and how students and employers are actually engaged in these projects. As you can see on this slide, you can get information, a little bit more information about our project at our website, so that that URL will take you there. The project will be conducted in 3 phases, and we are getting close to concluding the first year of the project. We began last August. We have been conducting and expanding the review of literature for this project. We have also put together a panel of national experts who are working with us on the project, and we also have an individual who's identified as an evaluator and working closely with us as well. So the project has expanded to include some of the experts we met as part of our earlier Lumina project, and in addition to that, a number of the experts and leaders in the NSF-ATE project or program. The first step then, and this step will be unveiled very soon, within the next 1 to 2 weeks, we will be conducting a very brief online survey of all National Science Foundation ATE projects and centers to identify those technician education programs that lead to and include new baccalaureate degrees, including the applied baccalaureate. This is a very brief survey. It should not take more than 5 or 10 minutes at the most. We really hope that people will take a few minutes to fill it out. It will begin to help us locate where these applied baccalaureate programs are being offered, and to also where new baccalaureate degree programs are being offered that are linked to technician education. And hopefully through that effort we begin to identify the kinds of programs that we're looking for and that we want to study in the future. There will be a second follow-up survey, a more comprehensive online survey that will dig deeper into program characteristics, partnerships, student enrollment, give us an idea of whether data are being collected to evaluate those programs, and give us just some more detail that we need in order to begin to be able to talk more clearly about what these baccalaureate programs look like. We will be conducting this comprehensive online survey in the fall. So we'll do our initial work this summer, and we will then be contacting some of those initial survey respondents again to get more detailed information. The next phase, then, phase 2 of the project, is one where we will be visiting programs. Based on our work in step 2 and the input from our national panel of experts, we will be identifying 6 to 8 programs that we'll visit. And our research team will be made up of individuals from our office. There will be individuals from the National Advisory Panel, as well as other experts and practitioners who are involved in the NSF-ATE program. So we will create a research team that will visit 6 to 8 of these programs, and that will be a fairly intensive visit to collect a lot of detailed information so we can really figure out how the programs work, how partners are involved, and how students are enrolled and performing in those programs. So that's a big important part of the project as well. The third phase is really not a phase, it's an activity that's conducted throughout, and that is the dissemination activity that we promised in our proposal, and that's beginning today with this website, our webinar. We plan to conduct webinars at each critical phase of our project when we have data and something to report, so you can expect to hear more from us about webinars that will be available to share information. We also have several other dissemination strategies, including our website, and we urge you to go there. We have done some initial work, though, that we wanted to share with you about what we already know about National Science Foundation ATE projects and centers. Based on an analysis we did of information available in abstracts and materials on websites, we've gone back to 5 years, since 2006, and identified 77 projects and centers that we can see talk about this idea of technical transfer. And some of the words that we've searched for and looked for include that there are 2+2 or 2+2+2 programs, there are creation of new applied associate degree programs, there are deliberate partnerships between 2-year and 4-year institutions, and interesting language for us are those projects that talk about creating full baccalaureate pathways. We have recently updated that information and looked at the most recent proposals funded by NSF-ATE, and we found an additional 44 projects and centers that have just been funded within the last year that we think are very good possibilities for awarding some of these new baccalaureates. So individuals who are in some of these projects will be receiving emails from us because we very much want to hear about your projects. We would just close this section by telling you too that when we look at the occupational fields or the technical fields in which these projects are located, it runs the gamut. It is the entire range of ATE technical fields. So there's that is, I think, very, very exciting to be able to dig in and look at how these programs are implemented and see what their curriculum looks like and who their partners are. So with that, it's time for us to take questions, and we have some important people here working with us who have been logging your questions, and so I'm going to ask Colin, I think, to read the first question.
I think this first question can probably be best addressed by Scott. Scott, I know you talked a little bit about the input of employers, but I certainly think you can kind of elaborate a little bit more on what employers think about these applied baccalaureate degrees. I know there have been a great deal of graduates from your program that have moved on into employment, and I want to know if some of your employers have given you feedback on some of the comparisons between the applied baccalaureate degree versus some of the more traditional baccalaureate degrees, and what value AB degrees seem to have with these employers.
Yeah, that's a good question, and certainly a fair question. Well, as a workforce-oriented degree, obviously we take very special care to ensure that students have the skills and knowledge that employers want them to have. And I don't have it today, but for the longest time I had sitting on the corner of my desk a study that found that the typical student, this typical graduate of the typical computing program required about 18 months of additional training post-baccalaureate to contribute to the bottom line of their employer. And you know, as a higher education professional, that concerns me. As a taxpayer, it concerns me. And within our applied baccalaureate program, because it's built on the philosophy of the Associate in Applied Science in terms of workforce-oriented, the technical professional, we work very hard to assure that that individual is aligned to the needs of the business and industry. We use the word technologist a lot. I actually happen to prefer technical professional, but it's more of the same of the Associate in Applied Science in terms of we take that individual who can walk into a situation and do technical things, and we build on that. And employers in general have been very responsive to that, and not unpredictable. Many of our students go out, they're there for 2 or 3 years or something, and next thing they know, they have opportunities to move up in supervisory roles, management-related roles, and in general, they've been very successful at that. And again, it's a wonderful pathway from my perspective for individuals for whom historically there haven't been very good pathways, and those are the associate and applied science students. I'm a huge fan of associate and applied science degrees. I think they're wonderful from an economic development and workforce preparation standpoint, but historically we haven't done a great job of providing individuals who want to move on at the baccalaureate level and in some cases at the graduate level to do that, and the applied baccalaureate seems to facilitate that. And that's also important to employers, not just students and their parents.
We have another question from Emily. She asks, are we aware the AB is the Latin form of a BA? And she said she mentions this because graduates of some liberal arts colleges are receiving AB credentials that have little to do with specific vocational preparatory curriculum. This is a wonderful point, Emily, and I'm really, really glad you made it. One of the findings of our Lumina study is that these AB degrees can be in liberal arts and sciences or baccalaureate of arts and sciences, and they are not always specifically geared toward a technical field or vocational field. They can also be in general studies. And that is an important point because there is a tendency to see these degrees as workforce degrees, and obviously many of them have that close tie to the workforce, but we too are aware that some of these degrees are not specifically vocationally specific degrees, and that's an important point. So we're interested in all of them. Our work here with the National Science Foundation is going to delve into the more technical forms of the degrees, but that is not to say that's the only type of AB. That's a good point.
Well, I have another question here. I'm sorry, I don't know who it's from, but it asks, what have been the drivers of the creation of applied baccalaureate programs? Has it been industry or educational institutions? I guess the simple answer to that question is yes. Simply because we've seen a wide variety of applied baccalaureate programs nationally, and I guess another group I would add to this, in addition to industry or educational institutions, I would add state policymakers. In the work that we've done with Lumina, we've kind of found that the applied baccalaureate degree kind of emerges from a number of different pressures, whether they be institutional or policy pressures. In many cases, the applied baccalaureate degree was created in part to facilitate baccalaureate attainment to meet some state or regional goals for baccalaureate degree completion. In these cases, the push for the applied baccalaureate degree was actually kind of started or driven by the state policymakers themselves. Of course, when you get into the place where you're designing these degrees or developing the curriculum of the degrees, the involvement of employers is critical. And I think if we have time, we may have Scott talk about this a little bit more. But certainly the development and the maintenance of these degrees is largely driven by the employers, regardless of who kind of started the creation of these degrees. Although when you go from state to state, you may find some degrees that are more completion-oriented rather than career-oriented, in which case the involvement of employers is a little bit less than it is in some of the more career ladder or technically focused degrees. The push from educational institutions is a little bit more rare. I think when you look at the applied baccalaureate degree maybe awarded by some of the two-year institutions, the community colleges or the technical branches, oftentimes the community colleges are involved in the creation of these degrees simply because it requires a little bit more of an institutional push to allow a community college to award these types of degrees. I'll open this up to see if Scott or Deb want to respond to this question about who's driving the development of the AB, but I feel like the answer is that it's a wide variety of groups.
I'll add just a couple of points. One is that I think we really began to see one thing you can't see in the maps. We just are showing this almost a little simplistic view of how the states have emerged, but within those states there's also been growth in some states more than others, but at the institution level. So within a state you might see maybe there's only 1 or 2 institutions, but in another state we might have seen an increase of 10 or more institutions come on board over the time period. There's a couple things that we see related to that in addition to what Colin said. One is the emphasis in states on baccalaureate attainment. And about 5-10 years ago, a lot of emphasis began to be placed on baccalaureate attainment and the college completion agenda. So while that's a very current discussion, if you go back about a decade ago, we began to see baccalaureate attainment, and the applied baccalaureate was mentioned by a number of state officials we interviewed as a part of the portfolio of the state to attempt to address that concern. The other area I would point out is just the growth in working adults. So we have many more adults who are coming back to college, and many of our baccalaureate programs are not very adult worker friendly, and these programs often are designed to really accommodate the returning adult who's already employed in potentially very successful in the workplace and now is interested in receiving that baccalaureate credential. So with that, I have a question for Scott from Richard. Scott, Richard asked, can you provide more details on the graduate program opportunities for your graduates, and what problems have they encountered? Are there any certain areas where graduate opportunities have been more plentiful than others? And if it's appropriate to address that employer question too, that'd be great. And we've gotten a little bit of feedback, Scott, that if you could speak right directly into your microphone, we could might help us hear you just a little bit better.
Sure, directly. Is that better, I hope?
A little bit.
Okay, I'm on my telephone, so I'm a little bit limited in terms of what I can do volume-wise, but sure. As far as computing, there aren't a lot of information technology master's programs, at least that we've discovered, especially in our general area. So most of our students end up going into management information systems or computer science programs or telecommunications programs. And with respect to the computer science programs, they tend to have to take some math background because we don't get as far into math and the math that they would need at the baccalaureate level, so they do have to make some kind of coursework before they move into those programs, but in general they've been pretty smooth, and we have institutions that we've worked with to make sure that those pathways are as smooth as possible so that we're advising students correctly. So that's really in terms of the graduate opportunities for our students. They do exist, and we've had many students continue into that. In fact, we just had graduation a week and a half or so ago, and 4 of those people will be going directly into the Master of Science Computer Science program at the University of Tulsa. And what was the employer question, Deb?
Well, the previous question, someone had asked about just how involved employers are and what role are they playing, and thought maybe you could address that.
Sure. Well, obviously they played a very strong role in shaping the program when it was actually created. And so we had many discussions with them and worked very hard with them to make sure that the program was producing exactly the kind of future employee that they wanted to have, because ours are workforce oriented. But they continue to play roles on an ongoing basis. But with that said, the people we work with, it's kind of a tacit agreement that we have with them that we're going to do what they ask us to do, and they're going to hire our interns and graduates. But they also support the program in lots of other ways, whether that be in-kind donations, serving as ambassadors for the programs, helping us find other advisors, so using their networks, making contributions to the program, serving as guest speakers, facilitating field trips. I mean, there's just an endless list of things that they do, but again, it's all in the spirit of help us get these people ready to enter into your industry and help us get them as prepared as we possibly can be.
Thanks for that, Scott. I have one quick question that I really definitely want to answer as quick as I can. The question comes from Pat, and it says, can you briefly address how regional accreditation has viewed the applied baccalaureate degree programs, and have there ever been problems conveying the difference in the transfer of AA degrees and applied associate degrees? And I'm actually going to go back in our slides. I had a slide I kind of glossed over. If you see the fourth line down, says the AB convening paper. We actually just released this paper today, and this highlights some of the talks that we had during a convening sponsored by Lumina Foundation, talking about the applied baccalaureate degree. And we're actually very fortunate to have 6 of the 7 presidents of the regional accrediting bodies come and talk about how they viewed applied baccalaureate degrees. So if you want to write down that link or go to that link real quick, I think that will answer all the questions you have about regional accrediting. We were very fortunate to have those folks come in, and we certainly talked about some of the differences between transfer of applied associate degrees and some of the traditional associate degrees. So I will let you look at that briefly and keep talking about some other questions that we have.
I'm going to jump in here. I would point out a point that the leaders of accrediting agencies made loud and clear, is that it's not their job to accredit degrees. They accredit institutions. So the concern for them is the fit of the AB with the stated mission of the institution. So that sort of becomes the heart of how they think about the AB degree as part of the institution's portfolio of degrees. And again, as Colin has indicated, there is quite a bit of information related to the convening, where we were very privileged to have that group of leaders with us, and we would also be happy to talk with you about that more. We also have a question then from Brandy, who says, have you seen applied baccalaureates used within the healthcare fields? And I am so glad that this question was asked. This is actually kind of an area where there's some disagreement in the field. If you look at what has happened in Florida, where we've seen really quite an expansion of the applied baccalaureate, the preparation of nurses, healthcare providers, teachers, and those in education have been a driver for the awarding of new baccalaureate degree programs, or the authorization of those programs. And so they very much consider healthcare an important part of their state's AB portfolio. Other states, however, have developed for agreements over a number of years to provide for example, the BSN, the Baccalaureate of Science in Nursing, and because those are considered part of their traditional transfer portfolio, they very much do not see those degrees as applied baccalaureates. So part of the distinction there is to what extent those degrees, the ADN to the BSN, as a part of a traditional transfer, and sort of the all of the requirements that have been met to make that happen, versus these newer degrees that are about transferring applied coursework that has been considered terminal. It's my observation that states are in different places with how they view healthcare and nursing in particular. So we didn't try to reclassify or rename any kind of degree program as an applied baccalaureate. We simply documented what the practitioners and policymakers in the field declare to be applied baccalaureates, and documented that in our inventory.
I'd also like to add to that, you know, when we think about healthcare fields, I mean, certainly beyond nursing, we've seen applied baccalaureate degrees in areas such as radiation imaging sciences. We've seen it in dental hygiene and a number of other fields that would be considered part of healthcare. So there certainly are some models or some representations of the applied baccalaureate degree in healthcare fields. I think when we get into the muddy area, we're talking about when we get into the nursing field and how states are viewing those degrees, whether they consider them applied baccalaureate degrees or not. I do have another interesting question that I think, Scott, you can certainly answer, since I think I know what the answer to this one is, but the question is whether applied baccalaureate degrees are having any difficulty transferring across state lines. So a student wants to move into graduate education. Scott, are you noticing any issues with them transferring from, or not transferring, but you know, graduating with an applied baccalaureate degree and moving to another state and getting graduate education?
That's a good question. I really don't have an answer to it. I'm not aware of any problems that have come up, and I think, again, going back to my comment about specialized accreditation, being ABET accredited has helped a lot with that. Because there aren't very many computing programs in our state that are even ABET accredited, and so going to an institution from a program that is ABET accredited seems to grease the wheels quite a bit, but I really don't have a good answer for that one.
Okay, thanks, Scott. And just real quick, a question from John about ABET and whether they have any specific sets of criteria for the applied baccalaureate. Is there a different set of criteria if it's an applied baccalaureate?
It really is more based on discipline, and so our instrumentation engineering technology program is pursuing ABET accreditation under the Technology Accreditation Commission. Information technologies, there's actually a set of information technology related criteria under the Computing Accreditation Commission. So I'm not aware of a specific applied baccalaureate. It's more related to the discipline in which the baccalaureate is in.
Okay, thank you. So another question that I had from Joyce regards how many credits are typically eligible for transfer from the 2-year to the 4-year when we're talking about an applied associate's degree. Certainly our definition of the applied baccalaureate is allowing for the transfer of applied associate courses and degrees, but in large part what we've seen are applied baccalaureate degrees will take an associate of applied science as an entire block of transfer. So in most cases where we're talking about institutions that run with semesters and do credits the same way, we're talking about 60 credits of transfer of the applied associate's degree. It's taken as an entire block. Sometimes those courses are taken on a course-by-course basis for the purpose of making sure the general education requirements are being met, because by and large these applied baccalaureate degrees certainly have to meet the accreditation guidelines for the transferring of general education credits. But most of these applied baccalaureate degrees will take any type of applied associate degree, and you know, depending on the model and depending on the field of the applied baccalaureate degree, they can either take any applied associate degree, which we see in some cases, but in most cases we see, if you have a specific associate of applied science, for example, in IT, you'll be able to transfer that entire block into a Bachelor of Applied Science in IT. So that's typically what we're seeing, is the entire block being able to transfer.
We have a question from Jeffrey who's asking, I think Colin and me, what percentage of the applied baccalaureates fit into the 4 models, so the management, inverted, career ladder, and hybrid. One thing I would say is that that's kind of difficult for us to answer. We can reflect upon the 6 states that we've done most of our work, and I'll respond, and then maybe Colin will have the same or different answer. I would say that the management degree as well as the inverted degree are probably the largest categories, and that's because those applied associate courses and degrees can be awarded, students can come into that from a number of different fields. So the management capstone or the general ed capstone can be applied to a wide range of associate degrees, and students can be together in cohorts in those programs. I would say that we see fewer good examples of the career ladder, hence the need to do this research, and the hybrid is still really being defined. So that would be my response.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that other than we really see it on a state-by-state basis. You know, if we look at a state like Kentucky, it's very completion-minded, so we see the inverted model a lot. We'll often see replication of models within the particular states, but yeah, certainly the inverted degree as well as the management degree are the more popular ones. But I can see we're running short on time. Deb, do you want to have any closing thoughts?
I want to thank you for being a part of the webinar today. We have received a lot of questions, and Colin is going to now thank you for being part of this and give you some more technical information about the webinar.
Well, I just wanted to inform you all that when this webinar concludes, you'll all be taken to a survey. I would love it if you guys would fill it out. It's only 7 questions. This will help us get some information for running future webinars, whether you like the format and other things like that, to make sure you enjoyed it, to get a little bit more information from you. We have received a number of questions that we weren't able to address. We'll certainly try to address those offline, or if you want to email us your questions, we'll do the best we can to address those. One of the questions I've seen a lot of has been whether we're going to have these slides available, and the answer to that question is yes. We will put these online as soon as we can, and we'll actually have the webinar recording available within the next couple of days as well. We'll send out an email to everyone who attended this webinar with all of that information, give you a chance to ask us any additional questions. We very much appreciate the turnout that we got to this. We're really excited about taking on this project and the work that we've already done so far. We look forward to working with many of you as the days move on. If you are with an NSF-ATE project or center, keep an eye on your email inboxes. We may be sending you a survey invitation within the next couple of weeks. If you have any additional questions or comments, please feel free to send me an email. And here's the contact information for all of us if you have any questions. I would also like to take a quick moment and thank Scott Newman for his time. It's been great having him. I appreciate his insight and his input. I think the things that are going on at OSUIT are very good, and I like the connection of the Applied Baccalaureate degree to NSF. So with that, we're going to close this webinar. Please feel free to email me if you have any additional questions, and thanks again.